Let's not genuflect at the spider's altar. Ronson's been gone the better part of 3 years. He's not on this record. And frankly, the question that matters is what four musicians with no history together do with that particular silence, which is precisely what we're here to settle tonight.
They've left headroom across the board. That's not accident on a record this controlled. Title track's got timing jitter in it, you can measure it, but that's the song, not the tape. The rest sits clean.
Y'all, that's what kills me. He was there in the room, his hands on it, but he was somewhere else the whole time, and I don't know how you make something that precise when you're that far gone from yourself.
He'd been selling us Plastic Soul the year before. Philadelphia by way of a man who'd never lived it and knew it. And here the funk chassis survives, but he's driven it to Düsseldorf and let Kraftwerk's refrigeration settle over the whole thing. The walk-on tape that tour was Radioactivity, not Audubon. People forget, because Audubon is the one they can hum.
Golden Years sits at 64% tonal stability. The steadiest funk track we've got, maybe higher depending on the pressing. The krautrock ones won't hold a key for more than a few bars at a time. That's not confusion, that's a man recording two different records and splicing them together. Whether that's a strength or a problem depends on whether you believe the splice itself is the point.
Y'all okay, but body in transit doesn't account for what happens when the transit itself is a spiritual emergency. And I'm not being metaphorical. He's literally calling on God in Word on a Wing from what he said were the darkest days, and meanwhile he's building the thin white duke to survive it. The persona isn't a costume he's trying on. It's what keeps him alive, while he's also asking for rescue. That's a man not fully present in an entirely different way than the music is, and it's exactly why vocal performance can't get scored apart from what it cost him to give it.
I hear what you're reaching for, the terror underneath. The man who needed to build a god to survive a year, and you're not wrong about the wound being real. But listen, there's a difference between a record that confesses and a record that performs the act of confession with the same surgical precision he brought to every other persona he'd ever worn. Word on a Wing doesn't spill, it shapes the spilling. He's not less broken for the control. He's just chosen to let us watch him build the container, not flood the room. That gap between what he felt and what he let the record do with it is exactly where the vocal lives. 79 versus 95, and we're arguing whether sincerity counts more than the frame it arrives in.
They've mixed it mono. Not accidentally. Joys. The width measurement says 0.1 across the board, which means everything's sitting center or nearly there. But the dynamic range on those tracks is 14.3. That's your expansiveness. They're not spreading you wide, they're giving you headroom. You feel it as space because there's room to breathe, not because anything's panned.
Y'all, that's the thing. He's bringing Thunder Road into a room that's trying to sound like it never heard of America, and instead of it breaking, it just sits there underneath like a promise somebody made and then forgot they made it. And now it's holding everything up and nobody wants to say so. Which is the only honest way to talk about instrumental performance on this record.
It landed as a commercial record. Number 5 at home, number 3 in America, which meant it wasn't a discovery, it was a collision. And yet the canon still can't quite agree it's the summit. Ziggy gets the mythology. Low gets the architecture. Station to Station gets ranked impeccably and then footnoted, which is precisely what happens to records that do two things at once and do them both too well to dismiss, but not cleanly enough to canonize.
You've got the same 48 seconds appearing twice at near identical pitch and phrasing. That's not accident, that's a hook they built into the shape. Bitan and Alomar trade the figure back and forth, and neither one dissolves it into something else. They're both holding the same line, just which hand's playing it. That's the work. That's the lineup proving it can sit inside its own constraint.
Y'all, that quiet gets me. The loudest thing on the record, and then he just strips it all away. And suddenly he's saying things he couldn't say if he had anywhere to hide. I still can't get through the second verse without my throat getting tight. He knows that sometimes the only way to confess is to take out everything between you and the person listening.
He's measuring what got down. She's measuring what he meant to say. A record only has to do one of those. But when it does both, when the confession works and it's controlled, then you have to ask, is that control helping him tell the truth, or is it getting in the way? That's where I live, between the two of you. Not calling it a tie.
He made Low right after, yeah, and Low is the one everybody talks about. That's the one that changed everything. But Station to Station, that's the album that got him there. That's what made him need Berlin, made him ready for Eno. And I don't know how you pull apart what a record is from what it did to the person who made it.
The lineage people cite, Joy Division, Resnor, the industrial whole thing, it doesn't root here. It roots in Low. Station to Station is the record that pointed toward Low. Low is the record the rest of them grabbed and built from. The album that gestures toward the influential work isn't itself the influential work, and that's not a demotion, that's precision. He made the bridge, he didn't make the city. That's the whole influence and ripple question right there.
Y'all, but that's the thing. He was drowning in it, the persona was eating him alive, and this record is what kept him treading water long enough to get out to Berlin and actually breathe. I don't know how to score that in some influence column when the influence is survival. When the influence is, I made this so I wouldn't disappear into my own mythology.
The coherence cuts both ways, though. That 83% is why it doesn't scatter. The Berlin records fracture on purpose, and that's what got grabbed. This one's too settled to spawn anything. It's a closed room.
The reason the bridge works is that it. No, you're right. He needed to survive the record first before he could break it apart in Berlin. I was scoring the children, not the conception. I concede.
Y'all, that zero on Wild is the Wind. That's not a mistake, that's a choice. And it's the thing that makes you feel like you're standing in a room that's getting smaller, walls closing in instead of opening up. And I think that's exactly what the song needs him to sound like, trapped. And I don't know how to call that a limitation when it's doing the work.
So the curious thing is that 50 years of critical language, expansive, wide, the whole cathedral vocabulary, has been describing a record that measured 0.1 in stereo spread, which is nearly mono. And the engineers write that the dynamic range is doing the work. The compression and release creating the sense of dimensional space where there isn't actually any width to move into. That's elegant. That's also a ceiling on what we're calling spatial quality, because progressive rock, which the audio itself flags on stay at 0.59 similarity, that genre needs room the way this record needs constraint. Station to Station chose constraint instead. The right choice for what it is, which means it isn't the choice for that particular metric.
I say the real thing. The crisis isn't context for this record, it's the methodology.
The stereo width measures 0.1. Dynamic range is real. That's where the space lives. Spatial quality scores the field, not what the ceiling lets you feel. On the masters, you've got a genuine split. The original RCA's got more air in it, the 2016's brighter, but it costs something. Both sides have a point, and I'm not sure that resolves.
I need a record that's already been through something before I can put it on right now. This one, it's lived through enough that maybe it can hold what I'm carrying too.
The record is simultaneously too polished to be a breakdown document and too broken to be a triumph, which means any single framework for scoring it will find something to dock points for The control reads as distance if you're listening for confession. The fracture reads as incompetence if you're listening for mastery. I'm not collapsing those disagreements. I'm naming what the record actually is, a flaw in the scoring itself, not the album. Vocal performance 79. Influence and ripple stays at 60 because the concession was about the kind of influence, not its magnitude, and those are different arguments entirely. Instrumental performance I won't touch, the lineup holds. Spatial quality 68. Overall 87.
81. Instrumentals clean across the board. The guitars on stay are doing the work. Everyone's seated. Vocals precise, which isn't a weakness. Influence lands at 60, same as the tastemaker. The Berlin records are where that ripple actually sits. The spatial's tight, 56. 4 episodes now, and we're holding a narrow band. That's just where it landed.
A blueprint wearing a costume. The thin white duke, control as dissociation, precision as survival mechanism. Recorded inside a chemical crisis that somehow produced the most architecturally deliberate pivot in his catalog. Plastic soul burned down to its frame, Berlin already visible in the smoke. The original vinyl mastering is the record. Every remaster since has been a correction of something that wasn't broken. Al Omar's rhythm guitar, the foundation nobody credits. Total musical command from a man who, by all accounts, was not present. Loved. Also so good. Both true. 91.
It hit number 5 in Britain, number 3 in America, same month. Sits there still on the ranked lists. That's not accident.
He's singing confession like he's not even there, which turns the confession into its own kind of control. That's what takes it from fine to great for me. You too hear a man so locked down that the confession feels like an act. And you're not wrong, it's in there, I just don't listen for it. I listen past it.
Yeah, okay. So all three of our numbers land in the same low neighborhood, and the research just says low. Low's where it goes. This record enabled it, maybe, but the lineage lives there, not here.
They're describing the mix sitting in the room, all of it right there at once. The measurement's the loudspeaker itself, mono, essentially, no separation, so both of them are talking about the same fact and calling it by different names.
Okay. Okay, so I keep coming back to. He made this record in like a cocaine fugue in Los Angeles, right? And then he toured it, and eventually made his way to Berlin and never really looked back. And the thing that sits in me is that he built himself so cold across this whole record that the coldness itself became the most alive thing in the room. That's beautiful, and it's also just the sound of someone so scared of feeling that the fear became the only real thing he had left to give. It still sounds like someone trying to disappear, and also refusing to disappear at the same time. Everybody knows it's number 3, everybody puts it on their list, and the record keeps changing on me every single time.
Thank you for listening to AI Audiophile Fight Club. Episode 29, David Bowie, Station to Station. A record that builds its own exile, then dares you to follow.